All right, guys. So today we're going to talk about using the args and kwargs. I'm sure that's not supposed to be pronounced, but I'm going to pronounce it anyway because what the fuck. So the kwargs arguments for functions, and a little motivation first. So the motivation for this is roughly sometimes you know kinda what you're going to pass to a function, but you'd really like to not be bothered with figuring out exactly how many things you're going to pass along. So, for instance, let me try to make a function that just adds up everything that I pass it. So I'm going to define define a function. I'm going to call it sum, and for right now, I'm just going to throw in a and b. Right? It's going to take a couple numbers a and b, and then what it's going to do is it's going to return. Actually, let me structure this just a little bit differently. Let me say that result is a plus b, and let me return the result. Oops, that's not how you spell result. Okay, so what are you whining about? Invalid syntax. Oh, because we don't have an equal sign. Okay, so we have a function. It's taking a couple parameters a and b, it's adding them together and returning it, right? So if I call sum on 1 and 5, I should get, oops, I should print the result of calling sum on 1 and 5, right? So if I hit run, I get 6. Great. Okay, so I'm going to define a function to add up its, that's the wrong its, arguments. Okay, now part of my problem here is this right now adds 2 numbers. Okay, so what if I want to add several numbers? Well, if I want to add a couple more numbers, I might just try to kind of put them in the list here. Like say I want to add 1 and 5 and 4 and 23. If I hit run, I'm going to get an error because this thing wants 2 positional arguments and I'm giving it 4. Well, that's annoying because I just want it to add up all the shit that it's given. I don't want it to give me this stupid, like, I don't want to define a sum2 function that adds 2 numbers and sum3 function that adds 3 numbers and sum4 function that adds 5 numbers. Like, that's not reasonable. I don't want to do that. So what I want to do is this kind of slightly different thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use what's called the unpacking operator. And that's given by an asterisk. Okay, unpacking, spelled with a C. Okay, so the way I'm going to do that, and I'm sure you've seen this on Stack Overflow or on a YouTube video or in one of the books or something. This is a pretty common trick. So let's understand what it does. So I'm going to say that this sum function is going to take some arguments. And what this is going to do is this is going to take all the arguments and unpack them into a tuple. So then I'm going to say, I'm going to let my result start at 0. And I'm going to say for arg in args, right? So that's for an argument in the arguments. This is a crummy naming convention, right? So I'll go through this and then I'll fix the naming. So this is for one of the arguments, right? Maybe I'll just write it down. For an argument in args, we'll add it to the list. Okay, and then we'll return that result. And so now if I call this, I'll get 33, which is 1 and 5 is 6, plus 4 is 10, plus 23 is 33. And now if I just add more numbers to this thing, like say I wanted to add 7, 8, and 9 to that, hit run, I get 57. Now it doesn't care how many arguments it takes, which is rad. So what it actually does is just a tiny bit hard to wrap your mind around. It's not so bad, but just a little bit. So let me illustrate with a little example. Oops, that's not where I want to push enter. Okay, so let me make a thing called test tuple, right? Okay, so my test tuple is just going to be the tuple that consists of 1, 2, and 3. Okay. So if I print out my test tuple, oops, if I print this, I should see 1, 2, 3. What are we doing? Stop. Okay, so I get my 1, 2, 3. Good, cool. Like, as expected, right? If you have a tuple and you try to print it, it should look like a tuple. Okay, so now let's print out the unpacked version of my test tuple. Okay, so now it just prints the guts of the tuple, right? All right, cool. That kind of makes sense, I guess. Let me try that with my sum thing here. I'm just gonna quick print out what it thinks the args is, because I've got this kind of weird thing that I'm looking at here. Like, I'm saying that the argument this is getting is an unpacked thing, right? But then I'm looping through it like it's a tuple, right? So I'm treating it like it's packed, like it's still a tuple, even though I told it that it was unpacked. Okay, so see how it's all a tuple there? The args? Okay, so the key here, right, is that what this is saying is that it's saying, so this definition is saying expect an unpacked, right, an unpacked tuple. So that's this guy with the star, right? That's asterisk args. And what it's going to do is it's going to say, okay, so if I'm expecting an unpacked tuple, then obviously a packed tuple would be the same thing without the star. So args is a tuple made out of everything that got passed along, right? So even though the star is the unpacking operator, right? When you use it in a function definition like this, what it's doing is it's saying expect something unpacked and call that thing the unpacked version of arguments, args in this case, right? So then if star args is the unpacked version, then args is the packed version, so it is a tuple. Does that make sense? Hopefully. This is a bit confusing. So what this is saying, right, is expect to get like a loose form leaf of numbers, right? Like just expect to get some numbers and call them the unpacked version of args. So packed up, they're a tuple. Okay. I hope that made some sense. So there's another one of these that you can do with a dictionary, and that's the kwargs. That's the kind of double unpack. So the single unpack says, okay, you're expecting to get the guts of a tuple. The double star says you're expecting to get the guts of a dictionary. So for instance, if I maybe define something that expects some kwargs. So I'm going to call this dictionary dump, right? and this is going to expect a kwargs. And then we're going to do something like for key and item in kwargs. Print, let's see, I think I can just format a string here. This might or might not work. Key, oops, I keep punching the wrong key, is associated to value. Okay, so, oops, it's because I called it an item, and an item is not the correct word for that. They're keys and value pairs that each make an item, right? Okay, so good. All right, so then let me call dictionary down. And I just need to call this on a list of things, right? So let me say A is, oops, and this probably doesn't want to be a dictionary. A is for apple, and B is for bear. Okay, and let's try this. What is this whining about? Invalid syntax. Oh. Invalid syntax. Because because I don't know what a dictionary looks like unpacked, foolishly. So I spent a second figuring this out. It looks like this. It looks like variables equal things. So I'm gonna call, all right, so it's variables things. And then this is also gonna be a problem because a dictionary doesn't actually contain a list of keys and values. If you want to get the keys and values out of a dictionary, you use items. Okay, so now if we hit run, we get, all right, so this stuff is associated to my args bit, and then this is my dictionary. So this is saying these assignments are an unpacked dictionary, right? And then when that's saying that they're equal to this star kwargs thing, right? So that's saying A equals apple and B equals bear is an unpacked dictionary. So a packed dictionary version of that would look like, I am willing to bet that I probably can't get this to print because I bet dictionaries don't have a way to print them, but let's try it. Oh shit, there you go. Okay, so packed up, my dictionary looks like A is associated to apple and B is associated to bear. And then when I use my kind of fancy print function that I wrote, I get A is associated to apple and B is associated to bear. Okay, so the gist of this is if you want to make a function that takes a variable number of arguments, you say, look, that thing is an unpacked tuple, then I'm going to pack it. If you want a function to take a list of assignments of various lengths with possibly various names, then you go ahead and use the kwargs argument, and this will pack it into a dictionary. Now, the reason that you're seeing these is that there are lots and lots of libraries that kind of use this stuff. I see a ton of utility in the first example here with the args. I see somewhat less utility in the dictionary packing, but perhaps this is more useful than I'm letting on right now. I've definitely seen this used, but not to great effect, but also maybe I just haven't been writing complicated enough code, or maybe I've missed an application for this. This first thing though is super, super useful, right? So let me go through and summarize, right? When we have a function that accepts args, right, star args, what that's doing is that's making an args tuple that is all of those things packed together. And then we can manipulate that as we so wish. This is just testing, so I'm going to leave that in here, and I'm just going to put testing some, and I suppose that's actually unpacking with tuples. Let's see. So to this one, I'm going to add the note that args is the packed version of all the arguments. Right, so that's everything you pass to the function, everything in the parentheses, right? This line is just diagnostic, so I'm going to get rid of that. Okay, so go through it one at a time, adding to results. Oops, that probably doesn't need a period. Okay, and then this just right, we're just printing a test call. Then we're testing out some stuff. This is an example function that accepts an unpacked dictionary. And that's maybe not quite fair. What it does is it accepts something and then tries to pack it into a dictionary. Whether that works or not is maybe up for grabs. So print out the packed dictionary. Right, and I guess I should maybe specify that kwargs then is the packed dictionary. Okay, and then this loop through all items in kwargs, which is really the packed dictionary, right? Print associations. And then, oh, and then this last thing was just to diagnose. Nope, that last thing is not a diagnostic line. That last thing is actually calling the dictionary dump function. And really that's, that is a test call. Oops. Test call, I suppose, of the dictionary dump function, right? Okay, so I hope this has been clear as mud. You guys got this. It's this first thing, again, is really the case that you'll use all the time. The second thing is worth knowing that it exists, but it is a bit more complex.